Hello, this is KEMi here, and I did promise earlier to use my book, A New Day, as a tutorial or A New Day by KEMi as a tutorial on how to start your book. So if you've read it or if you've not read it, it's available everywhere. You can find it easily, and the cover is like this, and I'm just scrolling down until we get to the first chapter. It was a book I wrote at the beginning of the year, and I wrote it live with a live audience from the very scratch, and that is why I dedicated the story to my initial audience, who stood by me in the very rough form of the book. So so this is the beginning of the book that I published, and I'm going to just use it as an example to buttress what I spoke about earlier on. So this is a story about this guy. So the very first line or the very first paragraph of the book says that John Conrad sat by the window of his favorite coffee shop, a stylus pen gliding with precision over the touchscreen of his detachable notebook. He memoed a few changes in the hoodie designs sent to him by Francesca, his friend and business associate of many years, before forwarding it to his office. So so when I said that you should make the beginning of your book dramatic and unforgettable, you can see that at the beginning of the day of the book, we started with introducing our main character, which is our main character John. Okay, so this is our main character, and then we mentioned somebody by the side who is Francesca, who happened to be like a sidekick for John or for the main character's son and in the book. But at least you know that there is somebody. And the next thing that you will know about John is that you don't know John. I have an idea of John before presenting him to the world. So I had to create like a little bit of backstory. Okay, so a bit of a backstory about him being a designer. You see, so now you have an idea. Okay, going by his job, he is a designer. Going by his gender, he is male, and going by um its relationship, there is somebody who is Francesca, who is a friend and an associate, and they had something to do with creating hoodies, creating hoodies and all those things right from the very first sentence of the book. And that was not all. We talked about what John was doing. So what he was doing, he was creating a design. And it was not in his house, it was not at his office, it was at a coffee shop. Okay. And we've not even gone to a second paragraph. We are still in the first paragraph, and then he had this relationship going, this tripod kind of thingy going, in which he could work with his office and with his business associate while still out there taking his morning coffee. You see, and then the next paragraph goes to say that it was a lazy work day, and John decided to run a few errands to keep himself occupied. He also had a few design ideas for his J. Cole's clothing line, a business he started a few years earlier, mostly dedicated to office wears for women, and his forthcoming fashion week was just the right dose of distraction he needed. So in the second paragraph, you can see more more backstories. So let's just call it paragraph 2, and you can see a lot more backstories, so we know a little bit more about John and about the kind of thing it does. So it creates clothing line, and it has a company clothing line, and it has a company known as J. Coles. So that is the name of his company. And so in the second line, we know a little bit more, and we know that in the in months or weeks or whenever to come, there is something about a fashion week, and it needs that fashion week as a distraction. So already we have created a lot of information of what you want your readers and to look forward to in the book. So we are looking at what is going on with this clothing line, what is happening with the fashion week, and we want to know more about John and his relationship with this lady known as Francesca. So the third paragraph talked about what John was is it talks about what John is doing now. He gazed out of the window absently as he sipped his coffee while it was still hot. Images blurred ahead of him of people dressed in well-tailored suits and corporate wears, rushing back and forth in their uncomfortable shoes, oversized thoughts, and briefcases, fancy cars zooming down the street, and echoes of non-specific chats in the background. So John, um, so this third paragraph now talks a little bit more about what John was doing, the environment, So we're just going to talk about setting because it's something that we should learn to incorporate, when we are writing our books, to talk about the environment, what is going on around him. So from the environment, we realize that John wasn't looking at the environment. We can deduce that where John was sitting was not with friends or just a leisure kind of happy hour activities. It was actually working. It was like a working breakfast, so to say, where it was actually in a work environment. Okay, so it was in an office environment, and you could see that looking out of the windows there's a lot of activities going on. So it was probably sitting close to the window, or maybe somewhere in that sense. I can think about maybe sitting on a tall bar stool or something, or maybe on a chair on a normal seat in the coffee shop. So but it's close to the window, and it was looking outside to what was happening, and there were a lot of people moving back and forth. And now in the fourth paragraph, that is paragraph 4, we can look at John now thinking. So we're coming back to John. So we're talking about the conflict now. So there is something that is going on about John and with himself. We've hinted that, okay, there was something like a distraction. So coming back to that distraction, he thought about his plan for the day. Now we're talking about thinking. So he did not just sit there and say, and sighed. It was just thinking, and what he was thinking about was pushing the story forward. So he was thinking about his plans for the day. He had a few meetings until around 2 in the afternoon. He had also promised Francesca, fondly called Miss B by most people, that he would be picking her son Tife from school later in the afternoon, and thereafter he will be spending the rest of the day at his studio. So we are thinking about now John thinking and having a chat with himself. What is my plan for today? And he was trying to draw his to do list, and it was So that's an activity that John was doing with himself. That was an activity he was doing with himself. He was trying to draw his to-do list. What is his plan for the day? He planned to help his friend Francesca. He planned to do some meetings in the morning up until 2 o'clock. He planned to spend the rest of the evening at his studio. So he had a lot of things planned for the day. A pretty standard day by all means. That's a paragraph 5. That is just one sentence. So sometimes your paragraph can just be one sentence. Sometimes it can be long, it can be short. I always advise to keep your paragraphs short and sweet, but sometimes you don't have a choice but to keep it long. But it's preferable to keep paragraphs short and sweet. Short and sweet. So that is a tip that you should keep at the back of your mind. So going on to the next paragraph, that is paragraph 6. What's going on then? He still couldn't understand. So it's more like another conflict going on with himself. You see, he still couldn't understand why he kept helping Miss B with her son. Now Miss B has changed from Francesca and now Miss B. So perhaps Francesca is what he thinks about when he's talking about a business partner, and maybe Miss B is his friend kind of character. And we've already mentioned that Miss B had a son named Tiffany. So coming back to the book, he still couldn't understand why he kept helping out Miss B with her son. Perhaps it was because she helped him first. Now we are looking at more backstories. She helped him first. So there was something about John that needed to be helped. So she helped John first while he was lost and hopeless, and she restored in him faith in humanity. Thinking about Tife, so there's another issue now. After thinking about Miss B, he started thinking about Tife. So thinking about Tife brought a faint smile to his face because he knew the boy would insist that John spent some time with him, especially now. So I'm adding more paragraphs now, especially now that he had new friends from school. Now we're talking about Tife having friends. So Tife and friends. So now Tife has more friends from school, and it didn't stop there. We actually were introduced to the friends of Tife, and their names were Ezra and Noah. Now the question is, how old is Tife, how old is Ezra, and how old is Noah? And then like little kids, because now we're talking about Miss B and school in child in school. So of course these 3 kids are like school age children most likely. And now John now thought, so the next line says that Ezra is my new best friend, Tife told John at the beginning of the school year. So now John was thinking about, okay, something at the beginning of the school year. So we having more people now in the stories. So we have Noah and we have Ezra. So we have and these are kids most likely. So we are thinking of them as children or school age children plus minus. So that is the story and some backstory, and that John and Tife soon at the beginning of the year they had some conversation about these 2 kiddies. They had some conversation about Tife and John, So we knew that at the beginning of the year. Excuse me, what's going on here? So we knew that at the beginning of the year, they both had some conversation about Noah and about Ezra. So let's continue with the story. And it's so we will think that those were happy thoughts coming to John about this family and friends. But the next the next verse is telling us that John also actually met. So I mean, I've lost count of the paragraphs, so I'll just write paragraph next. Tells us that John actually have met this kid. Okay, so John found. John recently met Ezra and his little brother. So Ezra is the big one and Noah is the little kid. And what is going on is that they spend lots of time with Tiffany at Miss B's home. It appeared that they just relocated to the country from the United States from their hometown in Atlanta. Ezra was a smart kid, a fun kid, but also responsible. John found himself developing a keen interest in these three boys. Somehow he felt compelled to be the man in their lives. So that is another another loaded couple of paragraphs, and we are thinking about John's relationships with these kiddies, relationship. Let me move this one. Let me make it smaller. So we are talking about John's relationships with three kiddies. So John had a relationship with them, and John actually had a friendly or a loving or a very personal relationship with them, and he thinks about them. It feels compelled. So there is something really unusual here. You don't see other people's children and you feel compelled to be involved in their lives. So it feels you don't see other kids and say, oh, I'm feeling compelled to be involved in their lives, and they wanted to be the man in their lives. So the question is that what is going on with them? Is it that they don't have a father figure or an older man in their life? So that is a process with your reader, and you're kind of having this step-by-step relationship with John already. And even though so just John drinking coffee at the coffee shop and trying to do some to draw some designs, we already have entered into John's life. We've entered into his head, and we've met people in his life. We've met Tiffany, we've met Ezra, we've met Noah, we've met Miss B, and still the professional relationship and the personal relationship and the fatherly or the I'll just call it fatherly relationship with the kids. So we've seen all these relationships in John's life, and so I would just say relationships. So we've seen so many relationships already in John's life. So and then going again, we see one big thing that happened next. Stop lying to yourself, John. A quiet voice spoke to him. So now this is huge, This is huge because when we're talking about, in one of the next tutorials, we'll be talking about conflict, We're talking about conflict. So this is huge because now we've been having an idea that something strange could be going on with John, but this paragraph tells us that truly there is something not quite right that is going on, because a quiet voice, he was fighting with himself now. He was having this character versus self kind of conflict. So he was fighting with himself about something. Stop lying to yourself, John. A quiet voice spoke to him. His face fell. His mind was drifting to the most difficult part of his life. So as if we have not even known enough about John, now we are talking about something so different now. We are talking about his past. And now we know that his past was difficult. So, and this is still in the first chapter. This is the beginning of the book. And we've known like a whole book already from one chapter, from second page, this is just the second page, and we've known all this information about John. You see, now we can see that his mind was drifting to the most difficult period of his life. So I think we're here now. So let's add a few more pages. So its mind was going to the past that was difficult, and angry emotions rose in him as he thought of his own fate. So now there is more worms being added to the can. So it's getting thicker now, like your plot is getting thicker, because now we are bringing in more people. While we are still talking about John sitting at the coffee shop sipping his coffee while trying to make a design, so we are thinking about someone in one corner named Faye. We don't even know anything about this person, whether it's old or young, big or small, male or female. We don't have an idea, but it has something to do with this person, this character, that we don't have an idea of who it could be. So of course, it had to do with fame. His love for kids, his fashion week, his interest in Tiffany, and all his new best friends. He knew he was simply trying to pay it forward in reverse. If he was still alive, John wanted him to be loved and cared for, the same way he loved and cared for other children around him. So, okay, it sounds like Finney was a kid also, and somehow it was related to John, perhaps John's kid. So maybe it's John's kid, son, So perhaps it was John's son. So he shook his head. So still talking about the conflict with himself, he shook his head in protest as he quickly shoved the thoughts aside. He had moved on. He had a better life now. A big part of him was still absent, a void that could never be filled by anything on this planet. But at least things were coming together again. He had his freedom back. J. Cole's was his new baby. His sisters were fine, so was his mother. So now we're adding a whole load of worms into the can. So the can of worm is getting so full now. So plot thickens even more, because now we are adding a lot of stuff into this kind of worm now. So now there is an issue about its past again. So the conflict is pushing our story forward, because we are having all these issues coming in as quickly as so quickly, you see. So all these things were coming in now. We are thinking about the past that was difficult, and we are thinking about John was protesting. Okay, let's just say he protested that he didn't want to think about that thing about his past, and we can see his reaction, to those things that are coming to him, and we can see that he is actually a broken guy. Let me just call him a broken man, you see, because now there's something about his freedom, there's something about his mother and sister, there's something about his new baby, J. Cole's, new baby, and these are words that you and we're thinking about things coming together again. So there's freedom, mother and sisters, J. Cole's, and we're thinking about life coming together again. So what happened to his life coming together again? So again means something has gone wrong in the past. Okay, coming together again. So something has happened in the past, So he was still fighting with himself, and he was still fighting that thought. So he blinked just to push it away. So you can see those actions telling us about somebody that's struggling with himself. He blinked, pushing the troubling thoughts away as he narrowed his eyes to focus on the image ahead of him. So he was trying to distract himself. He was trying to distract himself from those painful thoughts, and he just narrowed his eyes as well to see what was going on ahead of him. So he blinked eyes, he narrowed eyes, So those are things that are quite relatable when you are thinking about thoughts that are uncomfortable, and now you just blinked and then you narrowed your eyes, you just want to think about something else. And that was what John was doing here. And as he did that, so we are adding more worms again. So the plot is getting thicker. So the plot taking again, and what happens in right there, a certain view called a sight. So we've moved past what John was dealing with now. Now something that's happening again. So we're coming back to the environment. So what is going on? So he looked across the road and he saw something. And what thing did they see? He saw a lady in distress on the road across from him. Saw a lady. So there is a lady now. Now we have two ladies. We have Francesca, and then there is this new person across the road. I'll just say new lady across the road. She seemed to be having issues with her car, a flat tire maybe. So now we are looking at what problem or the conflict, another conflict going on there about a lady and an environment. So lady versus car. So it's lady versus car now. That is the conflict that we are dealing with in the environment now. And she was frantically making a call, clutching a purse to her chest and pacing around the same spot. So that is like you are showing, there's something that we talk about in fiction writing, and that is, let me add more pages now. Oops. And that is that you need to do more showing and less talking, So you can see that she was so I said show, don't tell. So from her action, from the way she was acting, she was clutching bag or her purse to her chest. She was making call frantically. She was pacing. She was making frantic calls. She was pacing back and forth around the same place. So those are like actions of somebody who is in distress, isn't it? So that is something to think about. So that's another tip on showing and not telling. And now, what is going on again? We are facing another conflict here about how John responded to that person. And John remembered that post vaguely. It reminded him of a certain someone he used to know while he was still in Lagos. So now we are talking about another location. There is a place called Lagos. So where is John? We've talked about somewhere about Atlanta also. Atlanta previously in the chapter, and we've talked about different locations, so to say. So we've talked about coffee shops. So these are some of coffee shops. So these are some of the locations that we've already spoken about in this chapter. So John remembered that picture of that lady. He remembered the pose vaguely. It reminded him of a certain someone he used to know when he was in Lagos. But that also belonged to the part of his life he preferred to leave behind where it belonged. He hated that his mind was playing tricks on him. His first instinct, so what was his reaction to it? So he pushed the thought away. That is reaction 1. Reaction 2, was to think of how to help, So that's his reaction too. He thought of how he could help that lady, and his first instinct was to cross the road and assist her, which he obeyed. Picking up his devices and his design notebook, he grabbed his extra coffee and rushed to assist his new distraction. So you can see that is relatable. If you want to help somebody, you don't just get up. I could have said he got up and he went to help her. But to make it more realistic, what is the action you will perform? You will want to pack your bag, to pick your computer, to pick all things that are valuable to you. And now we can see that he even ordered a second coffee and he picked the second one and he went out. So that is more relatable. When you're writing your book, don't just say he got up and he left. Tell us a little bit more about the process, So that was the process of him getting up, picking his stuff, and crossing the road. And as the first chapter ends, we are not done with adding more worms to the can of worm, and that is conflict, my dear. So we're adding more conflict. That is we are taking more conflict, and like I always say that conflict propels your plot. So it propels your storyline, your plot. Okay, so we have to create more conflict. So in the third one, as he got up, he crossed the road, he caught himself and halted to a complete stop. His mind was not playing tricks on him. He definitely knew the pose, a flight of freeze posture. He knew her, and that was Nicole. He began to hyperventilate. So you can see that this first chapter is such a whole book on its own. So I've created so many issues from just one chapter. So now you're like, which one should I follow? So you've created so it crossed the road and it stopped. So those are the actions after packing his cup of tea and packing his devices. So let's say he packed devices, crossed the road, and then he stopped. He halted. He just stopped himself. Like, what is going on? And he knew. So these are like action words that we're showing you. He knew the person, and now we know that the lady's name is possibly Nicole, and he knew her. So, and he knew her. So essentially, we have our second main character. So I'll call that one second main character, and that was Nicole. So in our first chapter, we've seen two main characters and one sidekick plus three kiddies who are also characters in the book. So we've met 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then we've met a mention of a mother and sisters, So and then there's this thing. So we've talked about here, we have Tiffany, we have Ezra, and we have Noah. And that, my friend, is one chapter of a book, and that is the beginning. And you don't get this thing overnight. You see, you don't get these stuffs overnight. It doesn't just happen because you are a great writer. It's just because when you're done with your book, you have to go back to the beginning, and so you go back to the beginning, and then you fix it. So I could have written something like John. So the main skeleton of it is that there's John met Nicole. That is the summary. But I have to go through all these stories and all these stories and move even around until we get to how they met each other at the end of the first chapter. So that's how to write the beginning of your book. You have to start with a bang. So now, talking about starting with a bang, you can see that we're not trying to create some 007 James Bond kind of bang, but we are trying to say that a lot of things you bringing in, you are introducing your main characters, you you are winning the attention of your of your readers. You are really putting your best foot. So I'm not hiding information and expecting my readers to try to decode what I'm trying to say. I'm very clear, like very clear. So we're talking about clarity and clarity of information, because you are trying to get people to read your book and not to give them quizzes for them to start thinking about. You're not trying to hide some mysteries until later, because you're trying to give them, just see what I'm trying to say. This is my point. This is the point I'm trying to make. There were dialogues there. If you look at it, but there are just a few dialogues, maybe one or two. Ezra is my new best friend. It looks like one of the dialogues there. And okay, stop lying to yourself, was John speaking to himself. Extra is my new best friend. And those are the two dialogues that are there in this chapter, but it's filled with a lot of information upon information, and you're overloading, not really overloading, but you're creating where your story will be going. So essentially your readers, they have your readers now, they know what they are in for. So they know that, okay, there are a lot of issues here for this writer or for this author to unpack for us to see. So there are lots of issues here to unpack, and you are likely to sit down and read the book because you want to know what happens here, what happens here, what happens here, what happens here. So it's my responsibility to start to unpack them one after the other, to talk about John and Nicole, John and Francesca, who is the fair, Fee, is past the past John's life, and all those other issues. So there are a lot of issues here to unpack, and I think I've been able to explain in practical terms what I mean by starting your book with a bang. And also, and I said in the previous video that you should make sure that you up the stake, and this example has shown how to hop the stakes. Like, you're getting something and then you're creating another thing immediately. I always tell people that on every page of your book, so I'll just put it as another star here, that on every page of your book you should create a conflict, or your or fix a conflict. So that's something that must happen on your book, on the pages of your book. On each page of this book, you can see lots and lots of conflict. I've not even fixed any of them. I'm just creating those conflicts, just creating and creating and creating, and I have to fix all the things I've created, and that's what moves and pushes your book forward, because you're creating a lot of conflicts and you're trying to fix them. And as one information is landing, another one is coming up. And the other thing I said that in the previous video is that you should up the stake, and secondly, you should maintain it. So imagine if I do not maintain this tempo, you'll be so angry, like, why are you not talking about this, why, and you'll be so angry. So it's my job to make sure that I keep this tone. So now I've already set the temperature. You can see, okay, something is happening here. So there is already you've already created the mood for your book. and you're right, your readers will have to adjust the seat to get into it and just munch the whole meal that you've prepared for them, more or less. So I mean, this on this note, we come to the end of this particular tutorial, and we will be doing another tutorial soon. Okay, so be on the lookout for another tutorial on fiction writing. Like I said, for now we'll be focusing on fiction writing. We'll be talking about others in, sometimes in the future. So have a blessed month, and yeah, so have a blessed month, and do take care of yourself. And like I said in the previous video, make good choices.